Hello, my name is Dana. I am the Prairie Knitter. Welcome to my podcast today. This is episode number 2. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who watched episode 1. I am blown away by the number of views so far and the number of you that have subscribed. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Honestly, I went into this not knowing what to expect, if anyone would watch it. I knew I'd have one viewer, at least. That would be my mother. I knew she would watch and support me, but I didn't anticipate anyone watching. But thank you so much. Little bit about myself. I am coming to you from Canada. I live in Manitoba. We live just outside the city of Winnipeg on about a 2-acre property. We're in a little neighborhood, not really considered a town or a city or anything like that. It's the municipality, is what I put down when it says town or city. Right, we've got about 2 acres, so I am learning to garden, and there is a lot of yard work to do. But we love it out here. We moved out 2 summers ago, so this is our second full summer here, and I'm loving it. I'm a city girl, grew up in the city, but turning into a country girl. I live with my partner. We've been together as of today. Today's actually our anniversary, so the day that I am filming this, it is our 11-year anniversary from our very first date. He is currently at the cabin right now. As is tradition, we typically don't see each other on our anniversary, but he'll be home later tonight, so that's fine. We live with our dog. This is Odette. She is my knitting partner, my work partner, my everything. She is 13. She's a long-haired Chihuahua. She used to be all black, but she's turned white in her as she aged. So she'll just be sleeping here. She's actually been a little bit under the weather for the last almost 2 weeks now. Something was hurting her, no idea what. The vet couldn't figure it out. We put her on some pain medication and that helped immediately. But since then, she's been suffering from some GI upset as a side effect to the medication. So she's off the medication now. She's not in pain. We still have the lingering GI issues. So hopefully that passes soon and she'll be back to her perky self. Anyways, what I do for a living, I knit in my, well, I call it my living, right? If I could, I would just knit all day long. But I do work. I am a healthcare professional. I run my own private practice and I work from home. My partner also works from home, so we've like to joke that we've got a 1-bedroom, 2-office home. So it's technically a 3-bedroom house, but 1 bedroom, 2 offices, which has allowed us to live in the country as well, not having to commute into the city every day. It's been wonderful. It gives me a lot more time to focus on the knitting. All right, so I'm going to follow basically the traditional knitting podcast formula today. So we'll start off with finished objects, we'll get into works in progress, and then I've got some questions from my first video that some of you left in the comments that I'm going to elaborate on a little bit here today as well. So to kick things off, I just cast off a sweater 2 days ago. This one doesn't have a name. It's my own design. If you watched my first video, you would have mentioned me, or you would have noticed me mention my own design a couple of times. It's got a wide neck to it, an oversized sweater. It's a formula that I've kind of come up with that I follow for it, and I've knit it, gosh, like half a dozen times at least. So I'm hoping to write it up into a pattern and release it in the fall. It's just a simple, all over comfy sweater. If you like wide necks like I do, this is a good sweater. Anyways, so I've knit this in 1 strand of fingering weight alpaca from Knit Picks and 1 strand of Surrey Alpaca from Woolberry Fiber Co. So Woolberry has this kind of monthly yarn club where she puts up 2 colorways every month for her collective members, and you get to choose what base, what colorway out of those 2 that you want to order for that month, and you get 10% off plus free shipping. So couldn't resist. Monthly yarn. So this was her, I believe, January colorway, which was Mornings at the Coffee Shop. So it's got these, it's a cream base with flecks of brown and flecks of gray in it. I cast this on right before I went on vacation. It was a bit of on a whim. Wasn't planning on casting on. I had actually planned on a complicated project for my vacation. I figured I had an 8-hour plane ride. I was flying to Italy. I figured I would work on the Sunweaver's shawl, which I'll show to you later. It was completely charted, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I've got 8 hours to focus on it. I'll get a lot done. However, our flight was delayed by about 2 hours, so I was just sitting around at home. We were all packed up, ready to go, and I'm just like, nope, I want to knit a sweater. So I wound up the yarn real quick, cast it on, and I knit on the sweater instead. On the way to Italy, I didn't actually end up doing any knitting. I ended up sleeping, which worked out really well because I didn't have jet lag. However, I did do some knitting while I was there and on the flight home, and it reminds me of Italy. Mornings at the coffee shop, that was one of my favorite things to do when I was there. Is we'd get up, we'd get coffee and a croissant from a local cafe. So this just reminds me of mornings at the coffee shop. So perfect sweater, perfect name. All right, throwing that over there. That is all of my finished objects for this week. I was hoping to have another one done for you. However, I didn't end up doing any knitting yesterday. I had a migraine. I get chronic migraines, so I had a migraine yesterday. Didn't end up doing any knitting, so it's still a work in progress. So let's move on to works in progress now. First one up, another basic wide neck sweater of my own design. I'll show you this one. So I've started the first sleeve on it, and I still have the other sleeve to do. So we are currently on Sleeve Island. Fun times. This one is knit with the same strand of alpaca from Knit Picks. So it's their Eco Superwash Bear. So it's undyed. And I'm marling it together. This is my first time marling. I hope I said that right. With a Woolberry Fiber Co. Surrey Alpaca in her home body colorway. So again, this was part of her monthly collective club. I can't remember, I think this was March. I think this was March's colorway. So I cast this on quite a while ago. It's been over a month and a half ago I cast it on, and I usually knit one sweater at a time. I like to be a monogamous knitter typically. However, mornings at the coffee shop took over. I could have brought this one with me to Italy. However, I was already onto the body and I was afraid it wasn't going to be enough knitting, and I didn't want to deal with any of the complications of casting off and putting on sleeves and all that while I was on my trip. I just wanted to knit the yoke and the body. So this one's still work in progress. Interestingly enough, it's the same yarn, same bases, different colorway, and it feels softer. I don't know if that's a thing. I mean, she changed her Surrey base recently, but both of these are her old Surrey base, but they feel slightly different. Don't get me wrong, they're both really, really soft. This one's just up a level in the softness. Out of 13, this is softness of 12. No, just joking. Italian joke. An inside joke we came up with in Italy. We found a package of coffee that was rated on a 13 scale for intensity, and we just joke now that everything, instead of a scale of 10, we're a scale of 13. Anyways, I don't know if it's a difference in the dye and the color lot or the processing or something, but I swear this is softer. This is a thing, let me know. I'm not sure, but it feels softer. I'll give you just a look at the yarn. This is how much I've got left to do the sleeve. So this is my third ball. All right, that's the first whip, the one that's getting all my attention right now because I need to finish it before I start something new. But let's get into what I had said I was going to knit on my trip to Italy, which is the Sunweaver's shawl by Ines Sang. I hope I said that right. I'll show you what I've got here so far. So I am knitting this with the Dreamy Sock base by Hidden Pond Yarns. She is a Canadian dyer and one of my absolute favorites. I love how she runs her online shop. So unlike Woolberry Fiber Co., Woolberry does releases. Like, here's a collection, you've got an hour to buy the yarn and then it's gone. Or that monthly collective where here's 2 colorways, pick one, you get a few days to order, and then that colorway's gone forever. Or until she, maybe does a feature of it or something, but typically it's gone. You can't just go onto her website at any time and order yarn. Hidden Pond Fiber Co., or is it Hidden Pond Yarns. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Katya. Hidden Pond Yarns. She has what she calls forever colorways. So she's got over 100 colors available on 7 or 8, I think, 8 different bases. And you go on anytime you want. You pick your base, you pick your color, you pick your quantity. She'll dye it for you right away and send it to you. So I love that it's always available. It leads to, instead of building up a stash of yarn, you can go project by project and know that it's always going to be available for you. So this one, Dreamy Sock base, so it is 70% alpaca, 20% silk, 10% cashmere. It's a dream. So I've got it in, we've got Driftwood, Bone White, and this one's kind of a custom dye, so it's based on her colorway Ladylike. However, I requested or asked if she could please for me dye it just a little bit darker. So she managed to do that, and I just absolutely love this combination together. Now, it wasn't planned, but now that I look at it, I know why they look good together. Neapolitan ice cream, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. Golden combo, classic. Not planned, but I think it's gonna go really well together. One last glance. So I've got all 3 colors already in there, and I think there's enough contrast. We'll see once we get to the color work. I hope it works out. All right, okay, that's it for works in progress right now. So I've just got the 2. I do have a lot of other sweaters that I've kind of abandoned for a while, so I don't call those works in progress because I'm not really working on them. Maybe I'll do an episode in the future where I talk about them a little bit more and go through the, what is it, walk of shame? Whips of shame? Anyways. I'm almost done this blue sweater, so I just could not wait. So I swatched for my next sweater. I have decided that I'm going to follow a pattern for this one, and I have decided on the Snowy Forest sweater by Midori Hirose. It calls for a sport weight yarn held with a lace, like fuzzy mohair Surrey type yarn to get a worsted weight gauge. So I have cast on, done my gauge swatch. So this here is the yarn I have decided to go with. This is by Pasley yarn, Pasley Knits. Oh my goodness. I write these things down, I swear. Pasley Knits. This was her Pi Day yarn. So on Pi Day this last year, Pi Day is March 14th, so 3.14 pi, mathematical, which I love Pi Day. I'll get into that soon. But there was a lot of indie dyers who collaborated this past Pi Day for yarn colors, surrounding pie themes. So she did one called Honey and Fig. So this is the honey colorway that she came up with. It's in her Sailing Sport base, which is 100% alpaca, sport weight, and her Swimming Surrey, so 100%, not 100%, Surrey Alpaca. Is that 100%? Is there some silk? Surrey Alpaca in honey. I also, because I couldn't resist, bought Fig. So she released two colorways on Pi Day, Honey and Fig. So it was based on a honey fig pie. I've never had honey fig pie, never heard of it before, so I'm curious, but this is Fig. I'll show you them together. Again, Sailing Sport, Alpaca, and Surrey. I love Pi Day because it's my birthday. I was born on March 14th, and I was actually out with my partner for my birthday dinner when the yarn released. I'd already knew I wanted it. She'd already posted the colorway and it came live while I was out for dinner, so I was sitting there in the restaurant on my phone ordering yarn. What a lovely birthday. Of course, then I had to wait a few months for, a month or so for it to come in, but I got to order it on my birthday. I think I also placed an order with Hidden Pond Yarns that day, or around that day, as like a birthday yarn splurge. Anyways, so I did my gauge swatch and it is off. So in the pattern, it calls for 15 stitches over 4 inches. I am at 16 and a half, 17 stitches over 4 inches, so my gauge is a little tight. I'm not used to that. I'm usually a very loose knitter, so my gauge is usually a lot bigger. I did go down a couple needle sizes. The pattern calls for US size 8 needles. I did my swatch on US 5s. So I like the fabric. I might go with it, but I'm going to do another swatch using US size 6 needles and see if I like that fabric better, and maybe I'll gauge with it. Just like I said, I'm a loose knitter. I usually have to go down several needle sizes. For example, with the wide neck sweaters that I knit for myself, it's a gauge, it's 17 stitches over 4 inches, I believe, and I'm using a US 3, so I think usually with that gauge, you'd be using a lot bigger needles. When I write it up as a pattern, I'm gonna have to figure out what would be the normal needle size for most people. We'll figure that out in testing, I think. Focus on gauge. Anyways, so I'll re-swatch this and then decide whether I want to do the knitting math or meet gauge. we'll figure it out. I do like the idea of a stiffer fabric rather than an open fabric. I think the drape will be nicer. Alpaca is very, very drapey. That is one thing. Somebody had some questions about alpaca yarn. It is a lot more drape than you would get with a sheep's wool or like a merino. So having the smaller gauge would make it a stiffer sweater rather than, whereas the looser gauge that the pattern calls for would be very drapey. Not sure if that's the look I want to go with for this sweater, so I'll figure that out later. Anyhow, that is it for works in progress. Hopefully in my next video I will have more to show on the snowy forest than just the swatch, and I will let you know what I decide to do with that. So in the questions on my first video, someone asked me, how does alpaca yarn hold up? I mostly knit with alpaca yarn, or like alpaca with a Surrey or alpaca with a mohair, rather than merino or other sheep's wool. I do have a few, but I do find I get very congested and itchy, watery eyes when I'm knitting with sheep's wool, so I prefer to use alpaca. Now, as far as it holds up, I've knit, I think, over 20 sweaters last year in the year 2022, and a lot of sweaters this year. So I've got a lot to spread out my love. Try to rotate them rather than wear the same one again and again and again. But the other thing is I work from home, so I usually wear pajamas. I don't get a whole lot of wear out of my knits, which is a real tragedy, and I'm hoping to focus on maybe just luxury, wearing one, the softness, the coziness in my office while I'm working. We'll play with that. But anytime I go out somewhere in the wintertime, I try to wear one. Summer here, it's in beginning of July right now, so it's a little too hot to wear sweaters. We've had a bit of a heat wave with mid-30s Celsius. I don't know Fahrenheit. We use Celsius here in Canada, so it's been in the mid-30s. This week's a little bit cooler. It's in the low to mid-20s, so maybe I'll get some sweater use. 20s is still a little hot for alpaca, but anyways, so I haven't worn them. I have brought out 2 sweaters that I've worn at least half a dozen times just to check the wear on those. So the first one is what I am wearing. This is my favorite sweater. This is the Shima Sweater by Lenny Hoy. Not sure if I said that right. I will link the Ravelry website to the pattern in the description below if you want to find it. It does have cuff details that I have omitted from the pattern, so that is the one modification that I did. This is my first Shima sweater. If you saw my first video, you would have seen a pink version of it. That was the third one I knit. I love this pattern. I love the fit, I love the drape, I love the lace pattern going down the front. This one being my first one was, I cast on a whim again. I wanted to wear a hand knit sweater in this yarn for Christmas dinner. I had 4 days, so I knit this sweater up in 4 days. Didn't know if I could do that. Apparently I can. I was also on vacation, so I did nothing but knit that time, but that's why I omitted the cuff detail. From this one, I just didn't have time to do more lace charts. I just had to get it done. I omitted the cuff detail on my next 2 Shima sweaters as well, though, because there's bobbles on it, and I figured that that would reduce the wearability of it. If I'm sitting at my desk in my office trying to type on a computer, the bobbles would get in the way. So haven't done that on any of the sweaters, but love it, love the details. Definitely go check that pattern out, try it for yourself. It's got a wide neck on it, but it's not too wide. You can see the bra straps a little bit, but it doesn't fall off the shoulders. So I knit this in yarn that I picked up at my local yarn store. It's alpaca, 100% alpaca yarn called Concept Alpaquina. Not quite sure on the colorway. She just has, they just have numbers for their colorway. And I held it with the Kidsilk Haze by Rowan yarns. If I can find the ball bands, I will put the colorways in the description. If I can't find the ball bands, my apologies. It's their burgundy color. I would call it burgundy. So this one, I took a look at it if you want to see, kind of, I don't know, can you see? I always check the armpits. That's where most wear gets done, is in the armpits. And there's no pilling yet. There's no pilling, there's no felting. It's held up really well, and I have definitely worn this one the most, at least half a dozen to maybe a dozen times. No pilling yet. Then the next most worn sweater of mine, one of my own designs. It's the wide neck, very wide neck, oversized sweater. This one was knit in the Knit Picks Eco Superwash fingering weight bare alpaca yarn, so the undyed, and a strand of Surrey Alpaca from Explorer Knits and Fibers in her Lone Wolf colorway. She does it again where she releases the collection, you buy it then, and then it's gone. So I will link to her website, but I can't link to the actual yarn itself. So looking at the wearability of this one, again, I'll show you the armpit. I don't see much pilling, maybe a little bit here, but I think that's not from this sweater. I think that's just from things like blankets and stuff that I've worn with it, because it's kind of a purpley reddish color, so I don't think that actually came from the sweater itself. So I would say this one's held up quite well. I have worn it a couple times with a jacket over it, so again you get a little bit more rubbing from the jacket. I've worn it on several walks too, so I was sweating in it. I wore it in the rain one day by accident. Didn't know it was going to rain, didn't bring an umbrella, got soaked, and I think it's held up quite nicely so far. So that's, well, I'll show you one more. This is a shawl that I made, my own design. It's a broken 2x2 rib. I will write up the pattern and put it available on Ravelry. It's a very simple pattern, so I don't know if you need it. It's broken rib. You can't sew as much as you want for the width. This is done in Hidden Pond Yarns Dreamy DK base, so it's her 70% alpaca, 20% silk, 10% cashmere base. And I have worn this so much in my office. I find rather than grabbing sweaters when I'm cold or chilly in my office, I like to grab shawls. So my goal this year is to knit more shawls. I showed you one in my last video. This is the first one I knit. The other one is kind of that pink purple one. Same yarn, probably about the same amount of wear on it too. And I looked over this and I could not see any pilling either, and this is me wearing it while working, sitting in a computer chair. I've worn it out several times as well, and it's held up quite nicely. So whereas the other ones were held with like a mohair or a Surrey, this is just on its own. So we'll see over time. I'll check back in a few months after I get a little bit more wear out of my knits on how they're holding up. But let's just go through the colorways here. So I purchased a yarn fade in this one. Each of these colors is available on her website. I will link to each one for you. So the first one, this is called Hot Cocoa. Then we've got Driftwood, which moves into Toasted Marshmallow. And then we got Gentle Fawn. Then we've got Creme Brulee. And finally, Bone White. That's my second time using Bone White. Actually, my first time using Bone White. And as you can see, I've got Driftwood and Bone White on this one as well, which having this shawl really helps me choose the colorways. I think that is everything I've got for you today. I hope that answers your question about how does alpaca yarn hold up. I will check back in on that in the future, see if it holds up even longer. I've only been knitting since December 27th, 2021 is when I started knitting again. I have probably been knitting for overall, I think about 15 years. Knit a bunch of mostly accessories before, hats, scarves, some mittens, things like that in the past, and then I stopped knitting for a couple of years due to some just family stuff. My dad was ill, so wasn't really in the mood to do much knitting. Plus I had just started my career, and work, starting my own business kind of took over, running that, so didn't really knit until right at Christmas time 2021. I got inspired to knit sweaters, and I hadn't really knit any sweaters before. I knit a couple cardigans, but never pullovers. I knit one pullover before. Can't remember the name of it. It had cables that looked like owls on it, and it didn't fit. It didn't work out, which kind of put me off sweater knitting, because you put so much time into it, and then to have it not fit you properly was really disheartening. Versus a scarf, it's gonna fit no matter what. But this time I decided I'm gonna knit sweaters, and I've loved every one so far. The first few ended up being really large until I realized my gauge is really loose and that I need to check gauge. That gauge swatching is important, because that's something I did not do on my first few sweaters, and they are ginormous. Anyways, so like I said, I knit about 20 sweaters last year, and I can't even begin to imagine how much I've knit so far this year. But I've got a lot of sweaters, not a whole lot of opportunity to wear them, but hopefully over the next year or so I will focus on a few of them so that I can answer that question better on how does alpaca yarn hold up. Anyways, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I think it's a little bit longer than my first one, and I will see you again in my next one, hopefully. Subscribe if you enjoyed this, and if you want to learn or see more of my knitting journey, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please ask me any questions, leave me any comments. If you have any pro tips for me, gladly appreciate it. Someone in my first video mentioned putting in the links rather than just the names to the patterns and the yarns, so I'm going to do that from now on. Thank you so much for that tip. If you have any more, please let me know. Always appreciate it. Anyways, have yourself a great day. Bye.